All right, welcome on into the Wolverine.com podcast. Clayton Sayfie here with Chris Balas and Anthony Broome on a Michigan bye week. A couple weeks for Michigan to prepare for Michigan State. So we'll talk a little bit of Michigan football, talk about the opening line here of Michigan State. Michigan opening as a 23-point favorite at home, night game, 7:30 kick, as we've kind of alluded to over the last several weeks throughout the season here. And at the Wolverine.com. We can talk a little bit of basketball. We had some access last week at Michigan's Team Media Day. Anthony, as well, was in Minneapolis for Big Ten Basketball Media Day. I don't know why it was in Minneapolis, but that's another story. And we'll do some picks at the end for college football and get everybody out of here on their bye week. Drop a like on this video if you're watching on YouTube. Let's get this thing to 500. And subscribe to our channel as always, and head to the Wolverine.com. $10 gets you an entire year almost until the next football season. So go and do that. 23-point favorite, as I mentioned. Michigan over Michigan State feels about right to me. Not surprising. I thought maybe it'd be a little closer to 20. But your guys' reaction when you see that now here with about 10 days until the game?
I think DraftKings is usually always the first one, and they're usually a few points off of what the other ones do, and then it adjusts from there, from what I've seen, because of the first ones. So it's not exactly Ace from Casino here making the picks out of the gate. And but I will say this: I think that's about the right number. I was thinking about 20, 21 points, 3 touchdowns. In fact, I had a dream last night that I was arguing with Rico Beard about what it would be. And I'd say it's going to be a 3-score
Sounds like
game.
a nightmare.
It is a nightmare, yeah. When Rico's haunting your nightmares there, but and for anybody who doesn't know, Rico's on 97.1 and wears his colors on his sleeve and everywhere else. So wears Tom Izzo underoos to bed, I believe. So, and he's a good guy. But I will say this: I think that's about right. I think this is a game where if you look at the two teams, Michigan's clearly the better team. When Michigan has a good team, generally they win that game. So I think they're going to win going away. I think they've made it a point to take this game seriously this year, more seriously than past years, and are going to come out swinging.
Yeah, the line feels about right. I saw some places speculating it could open up somewhere around 17 and a half or 18, which would probably have gone up to 20, 21, 22 anyways, if that was the line. So, yeah, I mean, when you look back at this series historically, I think I forget who the tweet was from earlier on Thursday, but when Michigan State enters this game with 4 losses or more, which I think has only happened 8 times or so, they've never really given Michigan a game. It's usually either Michigan blows out State or, when it's kept close, usually State finds a way to get the game. But I don't see that happening this year. I mean, this is a Michigan State team that is, I thought they'd probably win 7 games, and now they're looking for maybe 5 somewhere. I mean, it's a real tough sledding for them down the stretch here. But yeah, line feels about right. Matchup feels about right. I think even this week, I know it's not exactly rest and relaxation for Michigan. Some guys are gonna, take it a little bit lighter, but they're still practicing this week. Players are still kind of locked in. We talked to several players earlier this week. Trevor Keegan was among them. Roman Wilson was among them, saying, just kind of reminiscing about how terrible that bus ride home from East Lansing was last year. So I feel, anytime you play as well as Michigan did against Penn State, then you have a bye. There's always some inherent concern that, is this going to throw them off their game, or, they're just getting hot. Is this going to cool them down a bit? I don't really see that. I actually feel like it comes at a perfect time, especially with some of the guys that are banged up, a chance to kind of rest and come back. But yeah, 23 points, anything that's 3 scores or more feels right to me. Frankly, in taking stock of this game right now, I think that Michigan will probably win by more than that. But for Vegas purposes, sure.
Anthony, the tweet you're referencing, I saw that earlier too, from Jackie Moon's season. But there's been, I think, 9 times where Michigan has entered this game playing a Michigan State team with 4 or more losses. As you mentioned, Michigan has won all of them, most of them pretty big, including in 2019, 44-10 at the Big House, Michigan's last win in the series, and then a 9-point win in 2016. So under Harbaugh, it's still been the case too. He has had his struggles with Michigan State, but there's kind of a misconception that Michigan State is upsetting great Michigan teams every year. If you look at the losses, it was 2015, State made the playoff. That was a good Michigan State team. 2017, they were both mediocre. Michigan State actually was better. I think they won 10 games. And then in 2020, despite Michigan coming off that Minnesota game, that was not a good Michigan team, as we know. And then, last year they were both very good. Michigan State, one of their best seasons of all time. Michigan makes the playoffs. So that's kind of that misconception. But I agree. Michigan State, they come off this. They have some confidence beating Wisconsin, but I still don't think that's a great Wisconsin team. And I think that, they may have fooled some people with winning their first game under Jim Leonhard as an interim, but I still think they have some issues. Took double overtime at home as well. So, that's kind of that. We'll fully preview the game next week, but it is almost officially Michigan State game week. So strap in for all of that. You don't hear as much chatter from the other side this year, but we will see what happens there. Since it's the bye week, and Jim Harbaugh talked on his radio show on Monday about how Michigan's going to kind of self-scout itself a little bit as well. I wanted to do a little quick self-scout of Michigan on each side of the ball and then mention some special team stuff as well. But kind of from a broader sense for this offense, when you guys see, what it has done, how it's evolved throughout the season, what it did in the last game as well, which is obviously hugely important in the biggest game of the year. Where do you feel like this offense is at? Where do you feel like it can go?
That's a great question. Are they going to be able to run the ball on Michigan State like they did on Penn State? Probably not. I thought if you look at Penn State's defensive plan, I thought it was terrible, frankly. I think you're going to see more of an Indiana type game plan from Michigan State where, okay, you're going to have to throw to beat us, and J.J. McCarthy's going to have to be that guy. And I think we're going to need to see a little bit more with his feet. I don't think Michigan State's defense is worth a crap. I mean, we've seen that play out, but they're getting some of their players back. Xavier Henderson's back. I think Slade is back. They're still not great. And in fact, when they were healthy, they weren't playing very well at the beginning of the year. So this is a team that Michigan should be able to run on, but probably not to the extent that they did on Penn State. But I can see them winning that line of scrimmage. And I think these guys are going to take it personally after what happened last year when they pretty much shut down the run the same way. So, but if it does come down to J.J. McCarthy in the intermediate passing game or the long passing game, Michigan State's secondary is 121st nationally, I think, in team pass efficiency defense, despite Mel Tucker having his fingers all over that and taking control of that. So the great Mel Tucker. So it's going to be, to me, you can't be stubborn in this game, right? Come out and you don't want to turn the ball over and give your opponent hope, but your little brother hope, right? Give him think he's going to have a chance to win, but you do need to come out and be somewhat aggressive, I think, and I think they'll have a pretty good game plan. They've got 2 weeks to prepare.
Yeah, for me, I mean, the next 5 games is where we see a lot of these, I'll say younger guys, but maybe just ascending guys kind of take that next step. And I think that it starts with J.J. McCarthy. I mean, Michigan has, he's had a lot of growing to do. And I think the potential of Michigan's offense and the things that they could put on his plate are kind of dependent on how he responds to each test. And I think he's done about as good a job as you can so far. We're still seeing some of the mistakes, which again only get ironed out when you put them on film and they become points of emphasis moving forward. He's had, I did an evaluation of his first 7 games, and this is, you don't even need to do an evaluation. I mean, he has been insulated in like the best possible situation a young quarterback can be in. He's got good play callers. He's got good protection. He's got playmakers around him. And he just, some of the hero ball stuff, as that, at some point they're going to need him to throw to win a game. And I suspect that Michigan State is going to dare him to win that game for them, which I don't think that will end very well for them. But it's his growth. Like, what more can this offense do really does depend on what they can put on his plate moving forward and what he can handle. I think he's passed most of the tests. Again, even it's not a hot take. You go in, the deep balls need to be dialed in a little bit more. He's about 4 or 5% under where Cade McNamara was at this point last season. But other than that, this offense will go wherever he takes it, but also wherever this offensive line takes them. They're not going to run the ball for 400 yards every week. That was a historically bad defensive performance from Penn State, but just speaks to how dominant Michigan was in that game too. You're not going to have that every single week. Some challenges will be tougher than others, but yeah, I mean, there's nothing that suggest that this offense can't continue to get better moving forward. I still don't think they played a full 60-minute game.
Yeah, I agree. It's the next step is with JJ McCarthy, some of the intermediate stuff, some of the long passing. But man, you feel good going into a bye when you saw what that offensive line did against Penn State, really the offensive line against Iowa, some of the tougher defenses they've played, they've gotten better, even with some guys mixing in and out. Carson Barnhart now playing for Trente Jones, who, could be out maybe a week or more. Still, from this point, you feel really good about where you're at there. You have a Heisman contender at running back, which we all thought Blake Corum was going to have a very good season, great potentially, but who knew it was going to be this good? Man, is he incredible to watch. You have Donovan Edwards. You have some weapons on the outside. I think the wide receiving core was a little overrated by people, including myself, coming in to the season. But, man, do you like what the steadiness you have there with guys like Ronnie Bell? So I think that next step would be hitting on some of those bigger plays in the pass game. And I think they can do that. I think, JJ, has that in him. I mean, I think that's kind of something that we have really been waiting for over the last couple of years, and we just haven't seen it a ton yet. But flipping to the defensive side of the ball and where Michigan stands through 7 games and heading into the stretch run of the last 5, I dug up a couple stats this week that are amazing with this pass rush and how much better it's gotten over the last few weeks. And I give a lot of credit to Jesse Minter, Mike Elston, the whole coaching staff for what they've done. When you see some of these exotic looks, I mean, last week against Penn State, it was where no linemen were on the one side of the line. They had guys on the other side, and they had Jalen Harrell way out wide. And I think they got a sack on that play. You saw the play where RJ Moten blitz. Like, there's some exotic stuff they're doing. They're not always having to blitz anymore to get a pass rush. So this defense after the Maryland game with 4 or less rushers was getting pressure on 21.9% of its dropbacks. That was 111th in the country, or 111th in the country. Now, over the last 3 games, Michigan has gotten pressure with 4 or less on 39.8%. Huge spike there. And you're seeing it with a lot of that exotic stuff that we talked about. So that is huge. They're number 1 in the country in stop rate, which is kind of a new age stat by The Athletic that measures, punts, turnovers on downs. And that's only with 7 turnovers that Michigan's gotten. So that's impressive that you're forcing that many punts, not even letting teams get into field goal range. So I really like where this defense is at. I feel like it's getting better by the week and could be better than last season. As Jim Harbaugh said before the year, he kind of predicted that or had a suspicion, and we're kind of seeing that at this point. Again, a lot of what last year's team did was in that final regular season game. So some of it still remains to be seen, but where do you guys see this defense, and where do you think the next 5 games we'll see this defense go?
It's weird, right? That what's the last Michigan defense that forced a ton of turnovers? And I
I
remember
know.
asking Don Brown about that, and he said, "Well, I said this isn't a criticism. Those were the years that he was leading the nation in pass and run defense and everything else, total defense." And he goes, "That's something that we want to work on." But when guys are in man coverage all the time, you know what? It's tough because you're chasing the ball, and that's a tough task. There's no question about it. I remember talking to some of the Mike Zordich, some of the secondary coaches, and they're saying, "Man, it's our guys out there in an island, and they're basically by themselves." So to me, that's one area where they can improve a little bit. And I think Jim Harbaugh spoke to that a little bit when he said, we got to get 11 guys to the ball. You aren't always going to see that, but 5, 6 guys running to the ball. And Aiden Hutchinson always did that, and he still does that with the Lions. You always see him around the ball after the play, just in case there's a ball that leaks out or something like that. You're in position to get it. So that's maybe one area, but I love the trend for this defense rather. With the pass rush, I think you're going to see more of Iabioki. What can you say about Mike Morris, man? This guy continues to improve. And I think Derek Moore, I keep saying his name, but I think in some of these games, he's kind of the freak out there that you can see really taking that next step and really coming on at the end of the year. So the linebackers improved last game in watching the film. I thought they were better. There was one play, obviously, where it got away from them on the keeper from the old guy there, Sean Clifford. And other than that, the secondary's been really, really good. Jamon Green, man, has been really impressive. So I think they're going to get better, and I like where they are now. So I think Jim Harbaugh was right. I think this defense has a chance to finish the year better than last year's defense.
Yeah, obviously you want to see them rack up some more turnovers. I mean, with that just comes being in position. I feel like they have been in position. They've dropped a couple interceptions. I think the stop rate thing is probably more indicative of where they're at as a defense. They're not they're not letting teams get into even on Michigan's side of the field. I mean, they're snuffing stuff out and making sure that there's not a lot of damage being racked up just in general. But I think when you look at where this team can improve defensively, the thing that I think my biggest takeaway so far is that, especially in that Penn State game, I think that this defense plays, I won't say down to its competition. I think they play up to its competition in terms of the opponent that's on, when the pressure's a little bit higher, I think those guys play better. It's why in those games against Indiana, things were probably a little bit sketchy early. Let's call a spade a spade. That one's probably a little harder to get up for, or a little tougher to prepare for. But Penn State, I thought they were locked in throughout. I think they proved that they can stop the run. Chris, that's something I think maybe you and I, or maybe all three of us had as a concern early on in the year. So, I'm curious who's going to be around this time last year was when we saw DJ Turner kind of come out of nowhere. I think it was out of the bye week. He starts a game against Northwestern. And then, he's a guy that ascends in the second half. Who's going to be that guy on this defense? Both corners are playing really well. Safety wise, we've seen a little bit less of RJ Moten. Maybe we see some more Makari Page down the stretch, but those pass rushers too. I mean, I think when I still believe when you played Ohio State on November 26th, that your two best pass rushers are going to be Iabioki and Derek Moore. Those are the two most consistent guys I've seen when they've been able to get on the field. Jalen Harrell's been very good as well. Mike Morris been the best player on the defense, but in general, you hate to say there's not a lot of notes. I mean, there are always things you can improve on, but coming off of a game they had against Penn State and just getting a chance to watch some more film and just take some mental reps this week, I think is good for them. I don't know that I think they are better than last year's defense top to bottom.
You make a great point about the run defense. There's no coincidence that the spike in the pass rush numbers have come along with that. I mean, 17 rushing yards or something like that against Iowa, 30-something against Indiana, or vice versa. And then outside of a 62-yard run from Sean Clifford, which still you got to make that play, but it's one play. It's, then you're looking at about 60 yards of rushing for Penn State. So that helps when you get done some of those third downs. Pin your ears back, bring your pass rush package on the field. Guys like Iabioki. I will say Mike Morris, I think, has been the best pass rusher as a whole. Iabi's done a great job. Derek Moore, I agree. Chris, freak is a word I've been thinking about with that kid too. You watch him. How is he a freshman? I mean, He's still got learning to do, but he is going to be a beast next season, the year after, and who knows after that. I mean, he has first-round potential written all over him. But, no, I think those are great points. Moving on to the special teams, just real quick to throw out, can't forget them. Number 3 in the country in special teams efficiency. And as Jay Harbaugh said last week on the radio, doing no harm is the number one goal. They really haven't done that. They had one field goal blocked, but they got it back, weirdly enough, on the next possession. And then there hasn't been any turnovers. You've had a shanked punt or two from Brad Robbins. Doesn't seem to quite have the same, I don't know, like the force off of his foot this year, but he's still punting well. He's top 5, I believe, in the country in yards per punt. So he's doing a lot of good things. And AJ Henning's been a good returner. But real quick, rapid fire before we move on to basketball. Someone had this question on the Fort, our premium message board over at thewolverine.com. Week 9 in 2021 versus week 9, which will be next weekend in 2022. What's the Vegas spread? Who wins that game between Michigan 2021 and Michigan 2022? I'll start with saying I think this team would be favored to win based on some of the stuff they're doing offensively, based on what the defense has shown lately. And if you remember week 9 last year, the Michigan defense was still finding itself a little bit. That was the Michigan State game, which obviously it was a few plays there that they got beat up. But even, in some other games, you saw some bad quarters, bad drives, things like that. This Michigan defense has been a little more consistent. So I'd give this Michigan team the edge, which is saying a lot because we all know how far that team last year went.
I had it as a push, and it's hard. It's really tough. How would Aiden Hutchinson do against these guys on the offensive line? And it's all hypothetical, obviously, but it's really they're very similar teams, right? They're starting to bully teams up front. I think the center position, I think they're better on offense with Oluwatimi in there. I think he's mauling people. And those guys are a little bit older now. So, but that's a tough one. There's no question. And then, of course, you're going to have your faction that says, well, JJ versus Cade, blah, 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 blah. So, right. So, but yeah, to me, it's a push. And I hate to compare teams, just like Jim Harbaugh said he hates to compare. I hate to compare them too. So I'm going to take it the easy way out, and I'll say it's a push. It could go either way. 5-5 if they played 10 times.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay.
Yeah, probably. I feel like I was sort of not under attack, but I would give this team the edge because of quarterback play, and also I do think the defense is top to bottom, like we said before, a little bit better. But it's tough. I mean, they're 19-2 the last 21 games between the last two seasons. I mean, this is I don't want to say unprecedented stretch, but Michigan hasn't started 7-0 in back-to-back years since, what was the stat? 75,
73, 74. Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, we're going back almost 50 years here. So we'll see what happens next. Again, I'm going to be a little bit politically correct and recuse myself from the debate as Chris did.
Through week 7, though. I mean, it's only.
Yeah. I suspect that this team is better. But man, we'll see what happens next, but we are somehow in a modern, I'll stop short of saying golden age, but this run the last year and a half, and we'll see what happens the rest of this year. This is special. And this is what the Georgias do, the Ohio States do, the Alabamas, the Clemsons have done. What you've done as a program these last 2 years is put you in that conversation. And that is so exciting. It's exciting to talk about. It's exciting to watch. And when you can start comparing two really great teams to each other, and we're sitting here saying, oh, we think this year's team might have the edge, maybe have the edge over last year's Big Ten title playoff team. You're in a good spot, folks.
Yeah. Either way, you're in a good spot. You're right. Obviously, a hypothetical.
It's fun.
Yeah. It's hypothetical. It's the bye week. It is what it is. But thought that was a good question. Something I kind of was thinking about even after I answered that. I think the 2022 team would have an edge. So let's talk basketball. We got to talk to a lot of the players, just about everybody. All the assistant coaches and Juwan Howard took the podium for 35 minutes. Before we do that, real quick, though, a little tease. Let's talk about our friends at Prize Picks. Football is in full swing. There isn't a better way to enjoy watching your favorite team than by playing daily fantasy with our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the simplest form of real money daily fantasy sports and just pits you against the numbers. Whether you're a fantasy sports nut or a casual fan looking to add some excitement to the games, Prize Picks is the perfect game for you. It is the best way to have action on the game in states like Michigan, Kentucky, Alabama, Florida, Texas, Georgia, over 70% of the United States. Prize Picks is currently operational in over 30 states and Canada, not Ontario. You simply select 2 to 5 players and predict if they will go more or less than their Prize Picks projection. You can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. This week, a little mishmash. I got Aaron Rodgers going more than 223.5 passing yards against the Washington Commanders, terrible team. And Dorian Thompson-Robinson more than 265.5 passing yards against Oregon. That's the UCLA quarterback there. Hutch, our producer, has Quinn Ewers, Texas quarterback, less than 275.5 passing yards, and Jordan Whittington more than 2.5 receptions. And I don't know who he plays for. That's my bad. But
for me, I've got Bryce Young over, I think it's 303.5 for Alabama, if I'm not mistaken. It might be 330 even. I don't know. I think he's going to tear him up. So let's see there. What is it? 325.5. So I've got him going more than that. And now that I see the Aaron Rodgers pick, Clay, that I haven't seen before, I'm definitely going with the over on that one too. I think that's a lock. So the Commanders are awful. I mean, the Lions beat them. What more can you say?
And Rodgers they're not playing well. I think he's going to come out with a vengeance against that team.
Yep. He usually does that. When everybody says leaves him for dead, that's when they bounce back. Ron.
That's why I hate him. I'm going to stick in college football this week for both my picks. Staying in that Mississippi State Alabama game, going more than 30.5 receiving yards for Alabama running back Jahmyr Gibbs, and then LSU Ole Miss, I'm going more than 5 receptions for Keyshawn Butte because I wanted to say Butte on the air. So here we go.
That's fair.
Those are my picks this week.
What's the over under on spontaneous Butte? That's one for Anthony. He'll get it.
Ah.
Yeah.
I don't get that one actually.
Okay, South Park. Look it up. I didn't just make it up. So
that's right. I knew I heard it before.
Yeah.
Okay, so download the Prize Picks app or visit prizepicks.com. Sign up using the code Wolverine to get an instant 100% bonus up to $100 on your first deposit. So if you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget, that's the Prize Picks app or prizepicks.com and the code Wolverine to claim your bonus today and take the viewing of your team to the next level this season. Michigan basketball media day takeaways. We are, I think, less than 20 days now until the season. It's getting there. It's almost that overlap between football and basketball that is very fun, very busy though. What was your guys' biggest takeaways from talking to a bunch of players, from talking to Juwan Howard, from talking to different assistant coaches last Friday? And, what do you feel about this team?
I thought there were some telling quotes from Hunter Dickinson and others about how this team is tighter, and it seemed like a couple of guys kind of had their eyes, and they can, nothing against them, but had their eyes on the NBA a little bit more than perhaps the current team's success. I'm not saying that they didn't care about the team, but they had bigger goals and they were kind of striving towards those, and maybe those were in the back of their minds or maybe too much in the forefront of their minds. So that was number one. Number two, Doug McDaniel and the two guards you wrote about today, Clay, or yesterday, where you could play Jalen Llewellyn and Doug McDaniel together. Does that speak to Kobe Buffkin and that maybe, is he not as not coming along as quickly as they hoped? I've seen some really nice highlights of him, and he seems to have that little bit of a swagger back. And remember, this is a young kid, so if it doesn't click for him right away, then maybe it does, next year. But or maybe later in the year. But I think Doug McDaniel has made quite an impression as well. And then the Howard boys, Jet Howard and Jace Howard are Juwan Howard's greatest accomplishments. And look at the laundry list of things that Juwan Howard has accomplished in his life. Those are unbelievable kids. He and Janine have done a great job raising them. Just down to earth, good kids. And I think they're going to really help the culture of this team.
Yeah, I mean those guys are salt of the earth when you would think maybe they wouldn't necessarily have to be. Their dad was an NBA player for whatever it was 20 years and coached in the league and is the head coach at Michigan. I think when you look at the mentality of this group and the culture of this group, I think it's felt most by speaking with both of those guys, and that I think that kind of permeates through everyone else. I think this is going to be a grittier team. I think it's going to be a team that's willing to, not to say the last team, there were times last year where that team had some fight in it, but, I think there is something to, I'll stop short of saying addition by subtraction, but it does feel like no one's really peeking down the road on this group with this group. They are a bit, I think they're properly rated right now. I think Ken Pom has them at 26. I think the AP had them at 22, 23, something like that. So it feels like they're properly rated, but this is still a team that feels like it has a chance to compete for a Big Ten title and compete for a national title. It starts with defense. I mean, that's something that every coach we've spoken to that is a huge point of emphasis. They were just not nearly as good as they needed to be there in a lot of ways last year. But yeah, I like just spending some time with the guys that were in Minneapolis and then getting to talk to pretty much everyone on the roster on Friday. I mean, I like that this group has a little bit of an edge to it. Juwan says their outside shooting is going to be better. The defense we hope will be better. If that happens, I mean, yeah, they're going to have a shot. I know everyone's kind of labeling Indiana the team to beat, just like Michigan was last year, but you have to play the games. And that's an Indiana program that at times has kind of fallen short of expectations too. So yeah, in any other Big Ten, I think I would maybe have this as like a team that pushes for the 5th or 6th spot in the conference. It's a lot more wide open this year, and I think they do have a shot to win it.
Yeah, I think Indiana's kind of the favorite by default just because they return a decent amount, point guard, center. I mean, that's big. In a Big Ten and really a roster that has a lot of uncertainty on it, though, if you're Michigan, you have to feel good about having about the most certain thing in the entire league, which is Hunter Dickinson. I mean, you start there with him. he's going to be a guy that I feel like we're going to talk about everything around him so much because it's the most important thing, but he may get forgotten about a little bit with just how productive he's going to be and such a beast that he's going to be. But it starts there. Chris, you took the words out of my mouth with a few of those. With I'm buying the Doug McDaniel hype, and Anthony and I were standing on the court taking video of some of the practice we got to see, and they actually ran a drill this time. We were joking before, like, oh, it's just going to be passing drills. They ran a ball screen read drill, and some of those were really impressive. I know it's against weak defense. They had managers kind of putting a hand up or like going a certain way to make a guy read it a certain way, but some of his passes were good, Xavier Simpson-esque. And Xavier Simpson was there as well watching. So I thought that was interesting. I'm buying that, but you're right. Does that mean with playing those 2 point guards together potentially? We don't know how much they'll do it. We'll see. What does that mean about Kobe Buffkin? Does that just mean that there's not a ton of depth behind Kobe Buffkin, which I think is a huge possibility as well? And it could mean that Kobe has gotten a lot better and is capable, but we don't know. Defense is very intriguing to me because you lose your best defensive player, yet you kind of can't get much worse defensively in terms of how this program, the standards they have. And I think they're a little more flexible with what they can do with having, some more mobile guys on the floor. Shooting, we think that can be better. Juwan Howard said we'll be a better shooting team. Howard Isley said hesitantly, I think we'll be a better shooting team. But you do have guys like Jet Howard, guys like Joey Baker who can knock down shots, Terrence Williams. But Hunter Dickinson is the leading returner on this team in 3-point makes, which is amazing. So that's something to watch too. And I think he's gotten better from three. But decent amount to like about this team and so much to question about this team, which is going to make the beginning of the year, I think, really intriguing. They play a tough non-conference schedule, which, could be good or bad. We'll see. And it's getting there, fellas, with this season coming close. Anything else on basketball that you're thinking about with a couple weeks until the exhibition game?
Let's just get to it, man. I'm excited. So
Yeah.
Let's get to our picks.
Sounds good. Let's pick some college football for this weekend. Michigan obviously off, but we will start the segment off with Minnesota at Penn State.
Wow.
Penn State, a 4-point favorite at home, over under 44.5. Really interesting coming off that loss. If you're Penn State, they're talking about reading stuff on the Penn State site about an identity crisis, stuff like that. I don't think, losing to Michigan is really the worst thing in the world for, you were coming in, you were not expecting to win that game. If you're looking from the outside, obviously the program was. Minnesota's a good team, though. They're going to give them a fight, but I do have Penn State bouncing back, covering that spot there.
In the whiteout, right, at night. So yep. I definitely believe that as well. I think the environment plays a huge factor in that game. So Minnesota, it's weird, isn't it? We all had them pegged after the first few weeks. They're going to win the West, and now what are they, a game out or something behind Purdue and Illinois? It's what a weird conference. And Wisconsin, by the way, is dead last in probably the worst division. There's the row the boat guy. Wisconsin is dead last in one of the worst divisions in football. So what does that tell you about the Badgers? And but I like Penn State in that one.
Yeah, I think the Penn State identity crisis is probably, are we a grape jelly team or are we a strawberry jelly team on our peanut butter and jelly sandwiches? So
it's going to go over a lot of heads.
That's all right.
Yeah,
that's typically my humor. So I'm going to go with Penn State. I'm not confident about it. I think that was the type of game that sort of breaks you midway through the season. We've seen a lot of these recent Penn State teams finish poorly. They were 11-11 in their last 22 games under James Franklin coming into this year. But I'll go with Penn State, but I'm not confident about it, and I wouldn't bet it.
And just the story there is that Penn State during that halftime skirmish was throwing some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches at Michigan. RJ Moten got hit in the face with one. James Franklin talks about changes to the Michigan tunnel and stuff like that. Maybe some reprimand, for that. But that's the story there. That will be an interesting one. Probably the game I'm most looking forward to this weekend. Another one up there, Iowa at Ohio State. Ohio State 30-point favorites at home, over under 49.5. I don't know. That's a lot of points. Iowa still has a good defense. I'm going to take Iowa, but I do think Ohio State's going to roll. And I do think Ohio State is going to make that Iowa defense look not as good as it is, because that's what an elite offense does.
I agree. I think that's a lot of points. So I'll take Iowa with the points. I think it's 30.5 now, Clay?
Did it get up to a 30.5?
I think so. Yeah. Either way, I think they're going to stay within that 30 points, and you know what? Because they're going to grind it out too a little bit, and I don't think you're going to see a lot of deep shots and home run plays from Ohio State. I think they'll move the ball methodically, but that's a lot of points. At the same time, Iowa's offense is so bad, right?
It could be 49-3.
It could be, and they could punt every time, and then you know what? Even if Ohio State scored on half their possessions, they score 40 something points. So we'll see.
I don't like this one either, but I'm going with Ohio State just because I feel like in that environment, we've said this before. I feel like an elite offense will always beat an elite defense, and they just can't. Iowa can't score. It might be 31-0, but I think that Ohio State wins this one and does so big.
Switch my pick to Ohio State. I'm picturing 42-3 or something like that.
Yeah, you can do that. That's fine.
Purdue at Wisconsin is our next game. Wisconsin, 2.5-point favorite, over under 51. Give me
Wisconsin's favorite in that game?
I know. At Camp Randall, but still. Give me Purdue. Wow. They're still contending. Wisconsin, again, I said it earlier, but I think we might have been fooled by the one game under Jim Leonard where they came back and won, come off of firing Paul Chryst and winning that game. I'm going to take Purdue.
Yeah, I agree. I can't believe Wisconsin's favored in that game. They're terrible. So, and Purdue's, I think, going to throw all over them. So I'll go with Purdue.
I'll go with Purdue. I mean, for people watching the video edition, just the disgust on my face right now at that, just gross. Nope. I'll go with Purdue. Big Ten West is terrible. Good God.
Awful.
I know. It's funny. Their matchups always look decent on paper, though, because the lines are so close because no one knows what the hell's going to happen.
Right.
So it's at least interesting in that way. Last thing, only top 10 game on the schedule, UCLA at Oregon. UCLA quietly undefeated, although they needed help to get past South Alabama. They won by 1 point. They have won games really close this year. Oregon's a 6-point favorite at home, over under 72. UCLA has the better quarterback, a Heisman contender in Dorian Thompson-Robinson, but I think Oregon is getting overlooked week by week a little bit after they got killed by Georgia. No stock in that game anymore for me. It's at home. I'll take Oregon to win by a touchdown or more.
I think UCLA is going to win that game. I do. I think Zach Charbonnet is going to have a big day. It's going to be a high-scoring affair because they don't play defense in the Pac-12, right? So, but I do like UCLA to win.
Wow, that over/under when you see it on the screen,
right?
72. That's insane. I'm going to go with UCLA. I'm going with the Big Ten here, so I'm going with the Big Ten in the matchup. So,
future Big Ten.
Future Big Ten.
That's fair. The only crime is that over under 72. Beautiful. Going to be fun. It's at 3:30. It should be at 10:30 p.m. Give me that late night game, but it's a 3:30 game. So a decent slate of football this weekend. Enjoy it, everybody. Enjoy the off week and get ready for that stretch run. Rest up a little bit and make sure to follow all of our coverage at thewolverine.com. We're still rolling over there. $10 until next football season is the deal. So take advantage of that right now. It's not going to last forever. Subscribe to the channel, hit a like on the video, and we will see everyone next time.